Hi, this is boxing referee Vic Draclich here with the Ringside Boxing Show. You're listening to the best in boxing.
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responsi today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Hey, welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and it is a great day to be listening to this show, beginning with the fact that we've got Keith one-time Thurman standing by to talk to us in just a few minutes about his comeback fight with Josesito Lopez and his 2-year absence from the ring and how he plans to regain his perch at the very top of the welterweight division. That's a fascinating interview, and it's coming up very shortly. Our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, had some technical problems this morning, so unfortunately we're not going to have his report today from the UK boxing scene. But we will lead off with a look at the boxing lesson that Manny Pacquiao gave to Adrien Broner on Saturday night, and the rest of an interesting week in the sweet science with our expert analyst. Travis Hartman is a professional boxer. He's a boxing trainer and a promoter from Osborne, Missouri. He's now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid is a boxing journalist from Toronto. And John J. Responsi is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I are co-authors of an Amazon bestseller, Intimate Warfare, The True Story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward Boxing Trilogy. Guys, 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao pounded on 29-year-old Adrien Broner for 12 rounds Saturday night at the MGM Grand in Vegas. He hurt Broner in the 7th and 9th rounds and put Broner kind of in survival mode for the rest of the fight. Travis, the Vegas judge, is scored at 117 to 111 on one card and 116, 112 twice. And I've seen a lot of media scorecards that gave Manny every round except the 4th. Which fight did you see?
I scored it 118 to 110, so I think I seen the fight that the rest of the world saw, except those Vegas judges. But, I mean, it's like Riz was saying off there. Are we really surprised anymore with some of these judges' scorecards? You know, I guess at the end of the day, we're all a little tainted, but I'm just happy the right decision was made. But it's still a little worrisome that two of the judges saw it 116, 112, which is 8 rounds to 4. I thought I was being generous when I gave Broner 2 rounds because just like Broner, in typical Broner fashion, when he fights in big fights, he just doesn't let his hands go. He's got fast hands, we know that, but he just doesn't let them go, and it was his MO, and we knew that was going to happen, and that's what he did. You can't even, one thing Kevin Cunningham did tell him in the corner, which was right. He was like, hey, you're boxing beautifully, you're boxing good, you're moving good, but you're not making him pay, and you're not doing anything offensively after that, which is 100% fact. You cannot not land punches and win a fight, especially in boxing where points and punches score points, and that's how you win fights. Broner, at the very end of the fight, they told him you averaged less than 8 punches landed a round. So how can you expect to win a fight landing only 8 punches on average a round? And you just can't, especially when you fight Manny Pacquiao, because Manny Pacquiao is well known for his offensive assault, and he throws punches in bunches, and he always has. And it was the judges' scorecards, Dennis, it's shocking, but it's not shocking. And that's just because all of us on this radio show have been around boxing long enough that it was shocking, but it wasn't shocking because we see it so much. And I'm kind of getting tired of it, but again, I guess we have to take the good with the bad, right, and be happy that the right decision was made overall. And thankfully that did happen. But 116, 112 is, I scratch my head at that even. 8 rounds to 4. I could barely give Broner 2 rounds. I don't know how they gave him 4.
And hey, while you're talking here, Travis, we'll give you some credit because you got on Facebook right before the fight and told everybody exactly how it was going to happen. Broner doesn't throw enough punches. Manny's going to be busier, and that's how it's going to come down, and that's exactly what happened. So nice going.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that, Dennis. I have fun talking boxing, as you guys know. That's what all of us do. And I love predicting these big fights because I can predict them unemotionally. I really make my predictions based on not who I want to win, but based on what I think is going to happen. And, that's exactly what happened. And honestly, I'll take credit for it for sure. I always love to take credit. But I thought it was an easy prediction, to be honest, because that's what Manny's MO is, and that's what Adrien's MO is, and that's exactly what happened.
Okay, so Riz, here's what Broner had to say right after the fight. Everybody out there knows I beat him. I controlled the fight. He was missing. I hit him clean more times. I beat him. CompuBox scored at 82-39 advantage for Manny in power punches and 30-11 in jabs connected. That doesn't really add up to what Broner was talking about. Did he get screwed? How did you have it scored?
I think we got screwed. I don't see how this was a credible main event. I mean, it's fine for Pacquiao's debut, but I mean, we talked about this well before the fight. Broner should not. If there's one person in the world who does not deserve a bigger opportunity, it's this man right here. He's not one of these guys who's worked hard his entire career and has always been entertaining fights. So this wasn't like a Mayweather-Gatti situation either. Gatti was limited in what he did, but because of his, entertainment value, he fought De La Hoya and Mayweather both, guys who are, technicians, and he got outclassed. But he always gave the entertainment value. Broner's never given any of that. I can't see how anyone remotely would give him more than maximum 3 rounds, and only because like Pacquiao is 40, and the funny thing is, Broner's landing 8 punches around. Pacquiao's not exactly a defensive specialist. Pacquiao has always had so many defensive holes in his game, and at 40, if you're only landing 8 punches around, that tells me a lot. I don't understand. He threw less than 300 punches total. That's like 27 punches around. That's bad for heavyweights. Like that would be a really bad output for heavyweights. So the fact that he's only throwing that much is it's embarrassing. It's not, we see a lot of guys who throw a lot of punches and they just can't land much, and that's fine. That's not what we were seeing though. But again, it's not like Manny's footwork isn't making it difficult to throw punches. So no, I think it's embarrassing, and I think Cunningham almost seemed like a loss for words, because I think maybe he's thinking that if I tell him he's behind or he's losing, I think that would just shatter his confidence so much that he'll just never recover in the middle of the fight. And that's the last thing maybe he wanted to happen. So I mean, I'll say this, Broner can take a bit of a shot, but I mean, Pacquiao has one knockout in something like 10 years. So I would never want to see Broner in the ring again, or at least on TV in a notable fight, because I don't see. It's weird because I don't look at him and think he has fans. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but he's not. To me, he's not a really in-demand fighter where guys really want to see him fight. So where does the money get generated from? Why is he getting these headline fights? It doesn't, and it's not like he so much sells a fight either. I mean, Pacquiao's fighting here. People are going to watch Pacquiao regardless. So I don't really see the point of it. It's interesting to get Keith's opinion on this later, because I'm sure he's willing to get a crack at Pacquiao, and I think him and all the other top guys at 147 pounds are obviously way more deserving. Because I think right now, if you're looking at it, I don't know if Broner even cracks the top 10 or top 15. There's just so many guys there that are just so much better, and I think Broner will forever go down as one of the guys with the most amount of potential and the least amount of talent out of that potential, or the least amount of realized potential, because he'd based on the talent that we saw of him when he was at lightweight and at 130 before he got fat and couldn't make weight, he was a great fighter. I mean, there was talks of him being like a pound for pound top 5 guy. Mm-hmm. It's crazy how much has changed in between 6 and 8 years, because he's not old. The funny thing is, I think he's still 28 or 29 or something ridiculous. Right, so it's crazy to think how dominant he was in his early 20s, and no one thought this would be the trajectory. But that's this is the difference between a fighter who lacks discipline and a fighter who has nothing but discipline. Because there's a lot of fighters who just work hard and they have some skill obviously, but they will themselves to victory. There's guys who have had much less talent in their career, than a guy like Broner, and I've gotten way more out of it. But you see the difference between discipline and undisciplined. People always say Hopkins, as great as he wasn't, he was determined more than anyone else, but no one's ever been more disciplined than a guy like Bernard Hopkins. No one's going to ever say that Hopkins had more natural talent than someone like Roy Jones or even James Toney, but he's going to go down as, one of the greats because no one kept himself in more perfect shape. No one, slept at the same time every single day. No one, was so perfect on nutrition and all those things. And I think what we realize here is greatness is not just the 36 minutes that happens in the ring. It's all the other minutes and hours that are outside of it when the camera's not on, and it's not the entertaining stuff. It's not walking down and fans cheering your name. It's almost the thankless stuff. And I think if there's something we saw last night is the guys who do the thankless stuff are the guys who are great. I think Badou Jack can be in that conversation too, because that man fought with like a split. Like he had a gash in his head, and he fought for 12 rounds. And I guarantee, if you look at the output, I haven't seen the CompuBox, I guarantee he threw way more punches than Broner did last night.
John, you alluded to this before we came on the air today, but you had an observation about Broner's corner. Riz was kind of touched on this a little bit, but they might not have a lot of confidence in Broner's fragility, I guess you'd say. He might be mentally fragile. They try and convince him that he's doing great when he's not. What did you see last night?
Well, I remember when he fought Vargas, Cunningham got on him quite hard in that fight. He said, look, you're losing, you've got to do better, and he came on in the last part of the fight, if you guys remember. And the draw is debatable, but he did. So perhaps the fact that it was a huge fight, and, Riz could be right. Cunningham was concerned about saying something, the truth, that would really bother Broner. I don't understand that. I don't know how you can be a trainer and enable, to use that word, a fighter in the corner and tell him that he's doing okay when he's not doing okay, because you're not helping him by saying that. I don't think. I don't understand. I couldn't figure out what he was trying to achieve with Broner. He did say something interesting when he said, yeah, you're boxing well, but he did say that, but he didn't have the same intensity that I've seen before. I mean, he raised his voice before, and it's kind of, he reminded me a little of Virgil Hunter. The times I watch Virgil Hunter in the corner and his fighter's not doing very, very well. He's intense. He tells them, look, you got to get going here. You're losing, and I think most do. So that kind of reverse psychology. And then in the long run, it doesn't do Broner any good because, okay, he's 29 years old. He's had, 38 pro fights. He's not going to change much. But basically lying to him and letting him think he won is about the worst thing. If the guy ever wants to do anything, first off, I think we all overrated him. So that's part of it. But he needs somebody to tell him straight, look, you did not win that fight. You don't punch enough. Even when he was dominating when he was younger, he sometimes fell into a funk of some kind where he wouldn't throw punches. And can you imagine how frustrating that would be, in the corner of a guy that he's got some ability, but I don't know if Broner has another speed. It's just he's a counter puncher, and that's all he was trying to stick his left out a little bit and jabbing, but he's just not active enough, and he needs somebody to say, look, if you ever want to, and I'm with Riz, I hope I don't ever see him in a big fight again, but if he ever wants a big fight, and I think we will see him in a big fight again at some point, you have to punch. And, I would, this is what I would do. I'd say, look, if you're not going to punch, we're not going to fight. It's as simple as that. You have to fight. This is boxing. This is fighting. You can't wait and 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 wait. And he's good at that, but he's not going to win any fights that way unless he fights lower guys and he hits them with a shot, and that's it. So he and his whole act after, which I don't even believe was an act, I think he really believes he won. I think he, in his mind, he won because he survived, because he thought that, he read that a lot of people were saying he was going to get stopped by Pacquiao. I don't know why they were saying that. As we stated, Pacquiao barely knocks out anybody anymore. But to him, lasting the 12 rounds, regardless of what the facts are, is a win. Not a win as far as he won the fight, but a win as far as he lasted. Like somebody said, he was surviving. And so that's why he was. I watched the press conference. He was almost jovial. I don't care. I'm going to go out and have fun, and he's got all the money, and so to him that's a win. And in boxing, obviously a guy earns a lot of money, and that's good, but we don't want him to think he won when he lost. And that's what was. I was just rolling my eyes and going, God, Broner, you're talking about growing up. You're still about 12 years old when it comes to things. He's still in the hood, and he's going to stay in the hood. And his mentality, it's just the money. It doesn't matter about anything else. It's his right. He's a human being. But still, it was just, it wasn't surprising because we know Broner. But I actually hope that he might actually show something classy, but of course he doesn't. And then he actually was a little better at the press conference, at least. He at least hugged Pacquiao, and he was classy that way. But he still was saying the same thing. And he said he was going to go home and watch the tape. So hopefully he watches it with somebody, and they tell him, you didn't win. You did not win.
Doubtful.
I think that would be the best thing for him, Dennis, if somebody told him straight, you did not win that fight.
Yeah, and here's a guy who said a few weeks ago, I've had a Hall of Fame career. What a bunch of crap that is. Travis, the one thing that we know about Pacquiao right now is that he's not ready to ride off into the sunset. It's a lot more fun to be a boxer than it is to be a senator in an impoverished country, and he's enjoying himself. He's clearly laser-fixed on avenging his loss to Floyd Mayweather, but he's earned the right, if he wants it, to fight any of the top guys in the best welterweight division that we have seen since the era of the Four Kings, I think. And what a payday that's going to be for whoever he picks. Manny Pacquiao is still a draw. What do you expect him to do? What do you want to see him do? What do you want to see Pacquiao do next? You don't want to see him fight Floyd, do you?
Well, this is where I'm at with this. I love Manny Pacquiao. I think Manny Pacquiao has a heart of gold. This is away from his boxing and everything. I just think he has a heart of gold. And obviously he can still fight. We probably saw a 70% Manny Pacquiao last night. But a 70% Manny Pacquiao can still beat probably 80 to 90% of the fighters out there right now, which is what he showed. But honestly, and here's my reasoning why I do want to see him fight Floyd, is because, one, I don't want to see Floyd fight any top-notch guy out there, young guy, because I think they'll beat Floyd right now, and that would kill his legacy. Another reason, I don't want to see Pacquiao fight any of the top welterweights out there because I think they'll hurt him. I think an Errol Spence, a Terence Crawford, a Keith Thurman, I think they'll stop a Manny Pacquiao right now. So that's why I don't want to see those fights, because I don't think Manny Pacquiao would fare well his health-wise. He's 40 years old, and he's had, over 60 pro fights. So that's why I don't want to see that. The only reason I want to see him fight a Floyd is because I think a Floyd and a Manny fight would be actually exciting. It wouldn't be anything on the elite level, but it would be a fight that would, crazy enough, it would still sell. It just would. And I know that sucks to say that, but a Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao fight, it would be the biggest fight Manny could fight payday-wise. Even if he fought a top welterweight out there right now, like an Errol Spence or even a Terence Crawford, he's going to make more money fighting a coming out of retirement Floyd Mayweather than he would against any of those guys. So that's why Manny knows to call out Floyd Mayweather again. He's smart. That was a money call as well. He knew it. Manny wants to make as much money as he can before he gets out, because I think even Manny knows that his time has been limited for a while now, and he doesn't have many more left. So a Floyd Mayweather fight is definitely a retirement fight. You fight Floyd Mayweather and you make that kind of money, you definitely better ride off into the sunset. Even though Manny already made that kind of money against Floyd once, who knows where that money went with Manny Pacquiao. But I hope that whatever fight he takes, he doesn't get hurt. But I can tell you that whatever fight he does take, guys, it's going to be an exciting fight, and all of us will watch it because Manny Pacquiao still to this day lays it all on the line. He's 40 years old, but last night, I don't think he took one step backwards in a 12-round title fight. So he's fit still, and that's what's crazy about it. He's still so fit, and he still throws so many punches. And even, like I said, a 70% Manny Pacquiao is exciting. You don't see too many 40-year-olds not take one single step back in a fight and put that kind of offensive output. And I think Manny Pacquiao still had plenty left in the tank. So it's whatever fight he's in is going to be exciting. I just don't want him to get hurt. And if he fights a Terence Crawford, an Errol Spence, a Keith Thurman, or any of those top guys out there, I believe he gets hurt, and I believe he gets knocked out inside 12 rounds, to be completely honest.
Riz, could the next Manny Floyd fight be anything different than the first one we saw, which bored most of us to tears? Especially consider Floyd hasn't fought any fighter since 2015. It's been 3 years. It's been almost 4 years. By the time they fight, it'll be 4 years before he's fought a boxer. So could this next fight be more exciting just because maybe they are older and slower?
No, I think it makes it a lot worse, actually. We're not going to see, I think Pacquiao's output has significantly dropped over the last 3-4 years with punches thrown, and Mayweather was never a guy who was throwing a lot of punches either, so I think it'll be the same. To be honest, I have zero interest in seeing a rematch. To counter Travis's point, if you're not fighting the best, then you shouldn't be fighting, plain and simple. I understand that everyone has their own choice and all that, but, I don't want to see, I have no interest in watching the two old guys kind of fight it out and say it's for some sort of title or something, and that's a whole different argument. But if you're going to say that, if you're open and saying like, well, I'm not fighting any of the young guys right now, that's fine. But we never hear anything like that, right? We never hear that. No, at this stage of my career, I'm not interested in fighting him. I'm just interested in the big fights. I have a lot of respect for guys who at least say that because at least they're honest, right? And that's never what we'll hear. Because like you said, a guy like Errol Spence or Crawford might be dangerous, but I'm wondering what they see if Pacquiao's side think there's any chance they can handle Keith Thurman, and getting Keith's opinion on that would be interesting, because a lot of people, a lot of fighters who've even fought Keith have always said he leaves himself open, he gets reckless and all that. It's one thing to say that, but it's another thing when you're actually in the ring with that. It's not easy dealing with Keith because he's a freak athlete, but and maybe with Keith's layoff, I think Pacquiao's thinking maybe there's a better chance that they'll be able to beat him. But that's what's interesting next. I mean, I don't think Pacquiao's going to, he doesn't usually, he kind of has a set schedule when he fights. This was a January fight. He's kind of fought internationally recently, so I think his schedule is a little more flexible now. And I think the way they're looking, I think he's going to end up fighting sooner than later. I think they're probably looking at a summer fight. I don't think he's going to wait till the end of the year to come back. So the question is, who does he fight? Now, if Errol Spence beats Mikey Garcia, which was what we're expecting, and we're not seeing, we're not going to see Keith Thurman and Errol Spence right away, does Errol Spence fight Manny Pacquiao? And, I think the thing is, Pacquiao's getting to the stage where he's almost on that De La Hoya level at the end of his career, where all these guys want to fight him, especially the up-and-coming guys, not just because, he's a winnable fight, but because he brings that money, and it's the natural passing of the torch is what I like to see. De La Hoya became a pay-per-view star, lost to Pacquiao. Pacquiao became a pay-per-view star, and Pacquiao's lost to, Mayweather, Juan Manuel Marquez, but he hasn't lost to that young guy yet. That young guy who's supposed to be the next face of boxing, and arguably that could be Keith, that could be Errol Spence, and that could be Terence Crawford. I doubt we see Terence Crawford just because of the fighting networks, but I think Errol Spence is actually a possibility, and Pacquiao as a fighter, I think he's going to want to fight Errol Spence. I doubt Freddie Roach wants it, but again, what's Pacquiao's intention here? Is it to fight on all the fights of his contract and then retire? Is it just to have one more? Because if the guys who are fighting one or two more times, they're going to go all out. The guys who are just looking to make steady money, to kind of last the rest of their life, I don't think he's going to take a risk for that. I mean, Broner's never been a risky fight for anyone the last 5 or 6 years, right? He hasn't knocked out anyone worth mentioning, and he doesn't really have any power. He doesn't throw any punches, so it's very easy you're not going to get badly hurt fighting a guy like Broner. So it's a very safe fight. So I'm interested to see if that's the strategy they approach again, or are they going to end up actually going for one of the top guys in the division? And that's where greatness lies. That's where that's what the greats actually do. So it'll be interesting to see what Pacquiao's side does from here.
John, Travis thinks Pacquiao gets hurt against any of the top young lions. You seem to think that he might be able to compete, if not win. Is that accurate?
Well, it depends on who. If he fights the three guys that we're talking about, Terence, Crawford, Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, I agree with Travis. I think he'd compete for a while, but even last night, I like Pacquiao so much because I love what he does for people in the Philippines. He hands out money. I mean, that's so nice of him to do that, and you just don't see that. And I was actually concerned a little bit because he still does the same thing that he's always done, and he's never going to change. He comes in very recklessly with his chin up in the air, and if he fights a guy like one of those three, they're going to clip him, and they're going to hurt him. They'll knock him out, knock him down, hurt him bad, and I don't really want to see it. I think just because he's something of a freak when it comes to athleticism, the fact that he can move so good still, and he's still quick at 40 years old, he'd be a little bit of he'd give those guys a little bit of a problem for a while, but they would figure him out, and they'd get him. They'd stop him. I was thinking, though, that if he fought maybe somebody like Danny Garcia, who's more of a counterpuncher, that he could beat him. He could out-hustle him. If he doesn't get caught with a left hook, I could see him winning that fight. And that could be a title defense because he's got that WBA title, whatever that is, and Garcia might be interested. Garcia is going to be fighting here soon, so he might take that fight. Riz said Errol Spence, and last night Manny said he would be interested in fighting Errol Spence. So that fighter in him is still there.
Yeah. Yep.
So all credit to Manny Pacquiao. He talked about fighting until he's 43. So wow. He I was surprised. I thought this was it. I thought maybe this year, just this year, whatever he could get, and then he's done. But his wife said hopefully one or two more and we're out of here. But he said boxing is his passion, and as we've discussed it a million times on this show, it's hard to give up your passion. Really hard to give up your passion. And when you still can do it as well as him, top 10 for sure, he's still motivated. So I hope that he fights somebody. It's all about styles at this point in his career is the way I see it. If I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, okay, we want to put him in a position to win where it's a good fight. And in the Garcia fight might not be the best fight in the world, but he definitely could win it. So Sean Porter would be tough because Sean Porter would do what Jeff Horn did to him. He'd get physical. He'd push him. He'd do this. He'd do that. I don't really think Sean Porter is the guy that I want him to fight. But if he beats Garcia, I think it would be a good fight. I'm with Riz, though. I really don't want to see a rematch with Mayweather, Dennis. I think it might be a better fight, the second one, than the first, just because Mayweather is older and Pacquiao's been a little bit more active. And whatever happened in that first fight, if it's true or whatever about his shoulder, Pacquiao seems to be okay with his shoulder. He was throwing some pretty good pops, shots last night. He could catch Mayweather. It might end up being a more exciting fight, but I don't really want to see it. We know what it is, and I don't blame anybody for that. It's a money grab. We know that. It's what it was in 2015. They should have fought in like 2010 or something like that. But Pacquiao is still a player, but I wouldn't want to see him in there with the three main guys like we're saying. I just think that's too dangerous. But it might happen because if somebody says, look, Manny, we want you to fight Errol Spence, he'll say yes, as he did last night. So we'll just have to see what happens. But I hope they're smart about who they match him up with.
Travis, is Adrien Broner just a gatekeeper now? And if so, how's his massive ego going to live with that?
I mean, it's hard for me to even call him a gatekeeper because I don't even feel like he ever really, at this top level, every major fight that he ever stepped up to, he's lost. And he's never really beat anybody of note. He's never beat anybody that I would say, hey, he's a Hall of Famer. So I don't even know if I would call him a gatekeeper. He's turning into more of maybe a journeyman. I don't even know. I know that sounds probably extreme, but honestly, he'll be in there. He'll be able to go the distance with a lot of the top fighters. He will, because he's learned how to survive, and that's what he did last night. He survived 12 rounds with Manny Pacquiao. So I think Adrien Broner could be a good journeyman because of that very reason. He'll present a decent test, and he'll give you guys rounds. He'll give the top guys rounds, and he'll last. But the sad thing is, he's going to get another big fight because there's going to be another, maybe it'll be a prospect even now coming up that will need or want an Adrien Broner on their resume. And so Broner's going to get a couple more big paydays, not massive ones, but pretty decent ones. And I'd like to retouch on this one too, because Adrien Broner was telling everybody that he's going to make $100 million for this fight. His check was guaranteed $2.5 million plus pay-per-view sales. So he might walk away with 10, maybe, depending on the pay-per-view sales. But he was going around telling everybody, he was saying it on the TV shows and all of this, that he's going to make $100 million. But I just wanted to point that out. He's making $2.5 million guaranteed. So nowhere near the $100 million that he's claiming. But either way, Adrien Broner's going to make a little bit of money, guys. But Adrien Broner doesn't have it mentally. And you know he doesn't have it mentally when his coach in between rounds probably did not tell him he was losing the fight, because he was afraid of his fragility, Dennis. And it probably is true that he's afraid of that with Adrien Broner, because Adrien Broner is mentally, he's not all there and he's not strong. If you follow his social media networks, you can see that this guy has a lot of mental problems, and that's why I don't think he's ever going to be able to retain any of this money that he's made. It's going to be gone in years. He might even be in jail in years. Who knows? It's going to be really sad. So we've already been watching the unraveling of Adrien Broner, the last 5 or 6 years probably. It's just going to get worse now, especially now, because he couldn't even beat a 40-year-old faded Manny Pacquiao. So you know that's going to get to him mentally, and you know that he kind of is coming to the gross reality that maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Maybe I'm not as good as they told me that I was. And honestly, Adrien Broner's not. Adrien Broner's good. He's made a hell of a living for being more hype than anything, so good for him for making that kind of money, but he's not an elite-level fighter. He's not a Hall of Fame boxer. He's definitely not what they touted as a 4-time world champion. That's to me is crazy, you guys, and I know you guys have to believe that as well, that he's a 4-time world champion, and that was perfect marketing, perfect matches, because I just don't see him in that level. I think Oscar De La Hoya was, a 5-time world champion, and I don't see Adrien Broner even close to the Oscar De La Hoya level. And that's where, Broner's going to go down as a 4-time world champion, and that blows my mind. It blows my mind.
Okay, so who saw this coming? Marcus Browne basically pitched a shutout against Badou Jack and sent him away with one of the worst cuts we've ever seen in this sport in a very long time. Riz, was that a surprising fight for you?
It wasn't surprising that Jack started off slow. That's very routine with Badou Jack. He didn't do much in the first 5 or 6 rounds, but the exact same thing happened in the Adonis Stevenson fight, and by the time the fight was done, another 10 seconds, and Jack probably would have knocked him out. So that didn't surprise me too much, but the cut obviously just derailed everything, because at that point he's already so behind on the scorecard. He needs a knockout to win, essentially, and that cut was bad. That was one of the most horrific cuts I think we've ever seen. And they're breaking up during the fight. At that point, doesn't make sense. They should have stopped that fight. Common sense obviously dictated that he was well behind on the scorecards at that point. And when it was when you're heading to round 10, 11, or 12, and you could see that he can't see anything even. There's so much blood that is going over Browne and the referee and probably every fan that was there as well. But I think it's funny because, Browne was acting like this was all about him. It really wasn't at all. His punch didn't even cause the cut. And I think the funny thing is people are more talking about Badou Jack losing than Browne winning. The odds I know were fairly close for the fight. And it doesn't really surprise me because Badou Jack, I think, he fought at 168 and then moved up a couple of years ago. So he's not the biggest light heavyweight compared to other guys. Marcus Browne, he's one of those, he's a really good athlete. That's plain as day. But, this is the biggest win of his career. And to be honest, there's nothing that in the fight that I saw that made me think wow, Browne is, a great fighter. I think he's a very quick fighter. He's a great athlete, but there's a lot of, when you look at that division, Think of, there's Badou, there's Gvozdyk, there's just so many guys there. And I think all those guys would make life like very difficult for Marcus Browne. Dimitri Bivol is there as well. Letty Alvarez, of course. And with PBC, the setup the way it is, I think there's a good chance Gvozdyk might be next. And Gvozdyk, even though I have seen holes in his game, if he stood up to Adonis Stevenson shot, and if one thing Adonis Stevenson had in his career is freakish power, if he stood up to that and he was able to finish, and you saw the way he finished Adonis, like that combination was great. I think he'll be able to handle Browne quite comfortably. Badou Jack, and here's another thing. I mean, Badou Jack was 35, but he wasn't really an old 35. But if you look at who he's fought in the last, couple of years, we're talking about guys who, some guys have a lot of tune-ups and mail-ins. Badou Jack was the complete opposite. This is only his second loss of his career. And if you look at, he beats Anthony Durrell, he beats George Groves, he got a draw with Lucien Bute, and that fight, I think it was initially a draw, and then I think they turned into a DQ. He had a draw against James DeGale where most people thought he won. Knocks out cleverly, has a draw against Adonis Stevenson in another fight. That fight was really close, so that could have went, either way. And then he fights Marcus Browne. So, I mean, that's a murderous roll of light heavyweights and super middleweights. And I can't think of anyone in the last, 3.5 to 4 years who's fought consistent level opponents of that degree. And a lot of times in opponents' backyards, too. So, it's not like he was ever fighting in, Sweden, where he's originally from. I think he spent some time in England too. But you got to feel for Badou Jack, because that's a guy who just works hard. He just does things correctly. He doesn't talk smack or anything like that. He speaks from the heart when he says stuff. He's a religious man, so he's just constant about humility and being humble. But yeah, so he's they've mentioned it during the broadcast. He was a guy who's constantly looking out for others, involved in charity work. Meanwhile, Browne was, I think, arrested 3 times in the last couple of years for a domestic violence dispute of some sort. So It seems like that's a topic that's kind of existing in boxing and all sports and mankind right now. But it's a shame that there was a clear good guy here and someone you'd be rooting for, and it's unfortunately that the cut went against him, because if it was the other way around, I think there's a good chance Jack comes back and wins that fight. But, headbutts, when they happen, there's no control of where a cut's going to happen and who's going to end up getting it. So, which is unfortunate. But, good for Badou Jack, but at the age of 35, you got to think that the best days might be behind him. And, the road's only going to get tougher when he tries to, do the comeback trail, because that division might be deeper than I think I can ever remember it being. There's never been the division that's that stacked, and more importantly, there's never been when the division has been busy before. There's a clear number one guy with guys like Roy Jones or Hopkins. That's not the case here. So we're up for some interesting matchups, and I think Browne and Gvozdyk would be the first one.
John, the other huge stunner over the weekend was Pablo Cesar Cano's first-round knockout of Jorge Linares, a 3-division world champion, and a guy we all thought was, I still thought he was a very good fighter. Did that one make your jaw drop?
Yeah, it did. I had to write about it because we at Max Boxing and Seconds Out didn't really have anybody, so they had somebody covering all the fights, but I was out, and I had to watch it because I was pretty stunned, and it was, while I was watching it, I was thinking, okay, he's fighting at 140 pounds, talking about Linares, and the minute that Cano touched him, he went down, and it's just hard to say with Linares, because a few years ago when he lost, there was a thought that he was kind of fragile. And then he made it all the way back, and he gave Lomachenko hell, as we all know. Yeah. And there was something off Saturday night. He didn't look like himself. He was definitely overpowered, but, he's fighting a guy that had lost 2 of his last 3 fights. He was expected to win, as we know. And he didn't. I mean, he got blown out, basically. He got knocked down once, got up, he was okay. Got knocked down a second time, and he still appeared to try to fight. But then when he got hit with a left hook that he didn't see, he was really hurt. So I was glad they stopped it. But Yeah, I didn't see that one coming, Dennis. If I'm Linares, he's 34. He's been in some tough fights. And Riz again made a good point. I mean, sometimes it's not the age; it's the grueling nature of the fights that these guys are in. You know, when they're in tough fights, and Badou Jack, of course, he was in some tough fights. The only place I disagree with Riz there is I don't think he was going to win that fight, even though he got cut like that. I think Marcus Browne had a style that was confusing him, and he was smothering him, and unless he got disqualified, I think Browne would have won a pretty close decision. But I think Badou Jack would have came back because that's his style. But I think Browne would have still won. But back to Linares, yeah, I didn't see that. He didn't see that. His corner didn't see it. The crowd was stunned. He's talking about the most important thing to him is his health. It could be just as simple as that, you know, he can't move up 5 pounds. The difference in the power from 135 to 140 is too much for him. Go back down to 135. He said he wasn't sure he wanted to do that. So he's in a quandary right now. If I was advising him, man, I would be doing a pros and cons. You know, can you make it at 135? Who you going to fight? Confidence is probably shattered right now if you get knocked out in the first round by this guy. So he should take some time off, think about it. But yeah, that was the stunner of the night, no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and one more thing we got to talk about before we wrap up with you guys. Man, there was a mouth-watering announcement this week. Canelo is going to fight Daniel Jacobs May 4th at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. That's probably the best middleweight fight that could have been made. Travis, unpack that one for us. Who do you like?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one, and again, I think we have to give so many props to a guy like Canelo, because Canelo could have faced anybody. Canelo could have faced Triple G again. Canelo could have faced anybody else and sold this fight. So I think it's more and more to Canelo's credit that he is truly taking on the best. I mean, he's where Mayweather used to be in boxing, meaning he was the superstar of boxing. He really could call all the shots. Canelo could fight whoever he wanted to right now, and we would just have to accept it. And the fact that he's choosing at a young age still to fight the best in the world, like a guy like Daniel Jacobs, is phenomenal. And it's hard to unpack this one, Dennis, because I'm actually still reeling from the fact that they made this fight. You know, good for DAZN and Canelo and that team, because this is an amazing fight. I think Daniel Jacobs is a little bit underrated, to be completely honest, on the major scene, because this guy is talented, he's big, he's massive, he's athletic. I think he gives Canelo a crap load of problems. And I think the initial pick obviously has got to be Canelo, but I'm wavering on this. I mean, this is still so far away. We have until May, so I have a lot of time to ponder this and really research it a lot better. But this is a tough fight, and I think Canelo is he's in for a massive fight, and Canelo is really relishing this move up to middleweight, and good for Canelo, because he's taking on everybody. He's not cherry picking. He's not picking like smaller guys that also moved up to middleweight, and he's not trying to fight those guys. He's fighting a guy who, Daniel Jacobs, could easily be a super middleweight, and we all know that. He could probably be a light heavyweight and still compete, because he's so tall and he's so big, and he's a massive guy. So I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight. I think we're going to have to see the absolute best Canelo there is out there for him to beat Daniel Jacobs, and I think Canelo has always rose to the challenge. So I think Canelo is going to rise to this challenge, but it's not going to be an easy fight. I think for the first time in a really long time, we might see Canelo get seriously hurt if he gets caught with a punch from Daniel Jacobs, because by all means, guys, I think Daniel Jacobs is just as big of a puncher as Triple G is, just because of his size and how big he is. So if you can punch like Triple G, we all know Triple G's power is legit and it's real, and you're athletic like Daniel Jacobs, he could land one of those shots against Canelo, and that could honestly hurt Canelo. I don't think he can knock Canelo out, but I think he could slow Canelo down. I think he could hurt Canelo. So I'm going to go with Canelo right now as initial pick, but don't be surprised if I waver and change my pick before May.
Okay, so Riz, is this the toughest middleweight that Canelo could have chosen right now? You know, considering there's Golovkin and B.J. Sanders and some other guys, and who wins it?
I think it is the toughest middleweight, because the Charlos, the jury on them has been, you know, in and out for the last, seems like 5 years, and after the last performance, I think that solidified Jacobs as maybe the toughest fight. I think Saunders, when on his game and actually in the ring, is the toughest stylistically, and I think Saunders still beats Canelo because Saunders on his game is very dangerous. But it's that's a big if. The question is though, they haven't, I don't think, secured what weight they're actually fighting at. Canelo went up in weight recently and seems pretty comfortable in there, and I think, to be honest, he's getting bigger, so I think it's harder for him to make middleweight. Danny Jacobs is a big middleweight as it is, so I don't think he would mind actually not coming down to 160, so I wouldn't be surprised if they don't fight at 160. But you know what, and I'll say this though, I don't think Danny Jacobs hasn't looked as good as he did, because his best performance is the loss against Golovkin. I think for the most part we can all agree on that. And since then, he's went the distance all 3 times. One, the close one obviously being the Derevyanchenko fight, because a lot of people thought he lost that fight. Could have went either way. Now, that being said, he scored 2 knockdowns, one of each in his last 2 fights. So, like Travis said, he does have power. I don't think he has as much power as Golovkin, but if he does, I think the difference is Golovkin's always in a position to land, and I think that's been a big problem with Danny Jacobs. He's not always right there in perfect punching range. And I think the biggest thing that Danny Jacobs is going to have to do, his boxing skills have to show up. He cannot try to outslug Canelo. He has to try to literally just outbox Canelo, and I think he can do that. I think we've seen any time a fighter has outboxed Canelo, they've won rounds. That includes Golovkin, the last 3 or 4 rounds of the rematch, including the last round, because I still think he won that round. Amir Khan in the first 3 rounds against Canelo. Mayweather, obviously, Erislandy Lara, even Austin Trout when he won a few rounds. So I know we're going back a few years, and obviously Canelo's much better now. I think this is the best Canelo we've ever seen. I think and let's face it, this shouldn't be a surprise to us because he's actually entering his physical prime right now. So that's not a surprise to us that he's actually, reaching his peak or his best right now. I think Danny Jacobs is still at his peak as well. But I think right now Canelo is obviously, I think that Golovkin victory, controversial or not, but him having that W, I think for his confidence is just something completely different. But I think Travis is right that, Jacobs landing, could do a lot. I don't know if it'll hurt Canelo, but it'll definitely force Canelo to adjust his game plan a little bit. And, I think Jacobs is a superior athlete. I think he's more athletic than both Canelo and Golovkin, and I think that's why Canelo might run into some troubles. But I think it'll be a close fight. I don't see either of them knocking each other out. Jacobs he's been down a few times, though I think he'll be more disciplined though here. But it wouldn't be surprising to me if it's another close fight and another fight goes to Canelo. And again, that's not his fault, but I'm hoping that's not what happens here. I think it'll be a good scrap though. I think Jacobs, though, this is kind of the next step up that he wanted. And I'm wondering, I'm just curious what weight it's going to be at, because we were all expecting David Lemieux to be in line. Lemieux wasn't going to make 160 anymore, so that tells me that this fight might be at 160. So the question is, who makes 160 better, Danny Jacobs or Golovkin, or does it matter? There's a lot of questions heading into this fight. My initial thought is Canelo will still come away with the victory, but it wouldn't be surprising if there's that one judge who has a 9-round to 3 scorecard that no one else saw, because that's just the luck that Canelo has had in his life. But hey, I mean, you go out and create your own luck to some extent, but I think it's going to be a difficult fight, but I do think Canelo wins.
Okay, John, you're up. Is this a great fight? You know what? I'm looking at Jacobs' record right now. He hasn't knocked anybody out since 2016, Sergio Mora. Golovkin broke his streak of like 16 straight knockouts, and since then he hasn't KO'd anybody. How do you see Canelo against Jacobs shaken down?
Well, Riz stole some of my thunder. I'm thinking of it as a timing thing. Jacobs fought twice in 2018 against Lecky and Derevyanchenko, and he looked good, but I don't really think he's at his peak right now. I think he's gone down just a little bit, and I think Golovkin is peaking. I think Canelo is peaking. No. I think Canelo is more confident right now, especially after the second fight with Golovkin. feeling himself at his prime athletically. He's improved steadily. We've all seen it. I think his belief is as strong as it could be. So I think as far as that goes, Canelo has the edge. Now, will Jacobs give him hell? Oh, yeah. Now, Jacobs is bigger. He's longer. He's going to stick that jab out. Canelo is quick, and he's gonna pound Jacobs to the body. And I think this has the possibility of being not only a good fight, but a great fight in spurts. Because Jacobs is going to want to box, and Canelo can box and punch, as we saw, and slug, as we saw, in the Golovkin fight where he was very aggressive. I think he's going to mix his game up here and keep Jacobs guessing. But I have to go along with Travis and Riz. I think Canelo's going to win it. I think he's going to. I think it's going to be a hell of a fight, very close. Jacobs will start fast. Canelo will come on. It'll be back and forth, but I think Canelo takes it either by a late stoppage or by decision. And but if Jacobs was to win, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. But Canelo is he's just rolling right now, and it's almost like not a big gambler, but it's almost like when they say let it roll, let's keep it going. You put your money on the hot hand, and I think he's just got a hot hand right now.
Okay, and one more fight we got to talk about, and this is a question for Travis because you got one coming up February 8th in Motor City Casino in Detroit. What's going on, Travis?
Yeah, I signed to fight February 8th against Daryl Cunningham. It's the first time in probably 10-plus years that I've gotten at least 4 weeks to train for a big fight out of town. So I'm pretty excited about that because, like I said, I've always had the talent, but I've never been called on enough notice to train. I fought Keith Thurman, I fought Terence, Crawford, I fought all those guys, but I also fought all those guys on under 5 days notice with, less than 5 days training. So I jumped all over this. It's a great opportunity. Daryl Cunningham is 40 wins and 9 losses as a pro. He's also 44 years old, so that's why I'm taking it as a huge opportunity, and it's kind of reinvigorated this motivation in me. Obviously, you guys know that I was contemplating retirement last April after my fight with Cordell Booker, and it was just mainly because I never got a chance to train for fights. They would call me on short notice, and of course I would get my butt kicked, without proper training. So, this time I'm giving it a go. I've actually been going over to St. Pete Boxing where Keith Thurman trains. And getting some sparring in over there. I went there yesterday and got some sparring. Some young kid smacked me around a little bit, but I definitely needed it. And then Keith Thurman was there ringside, helping me, giving me water and stuff. So it's such a great atmosphere, and it really has brought my passion and my motivation back to kind of get the best out of my abilities, which I don't think I've done as a pro, honestly, yet. And that's crazy because I've been pro for 15 years, but I don't think we've seen the best possible Travis Hartman yet. So that's what I'm planning. February 8th, hopefully it's going to be my coming out party, and I get to show my full potential after a 4-week training camp. But I'm definitely excited. I'm definitely stoked, and training camp's really hard right now. I'm pretty sore. I've noticed that. Being 35 years old, I noticed that I can still do all of the same things. It's just the recovery and the rehab afterwards is just a little more strenuous now. I have to take some other steps after I have a hard week of training, When I go back home, I do these recovery pump and things like that. So it's been fun, but I'm excited. I can't wait to come back on the Ringside Radio Show, February 9th or February 10th and tell you guys about my big victory.
Okay, and being a Colorado boy, I got to ask you, how was it running in Colorado? Because you trained there for a while.
Yeah, I went up there for a week, and I'm not going to lie, Dennis. I was out of breath walking up the stairs. And that's the truth of it. And I'm not even kidding. I was in pretty decent shape, honestly, actually, cardio-wise, before I even went out there. I'd already been running and doing some bag work and stuff, and I was like, what the heck is wrong with me? I'm breathing. And then I'm laying in bed, and I roll over in bed a couple of times, and I started breathing hard then. And I'm just like, it's definitely, I think there's a lot to it, and that's why you see all the top guys train in the high altitude. I mean, Colorado Springs is where the United States Olympic Training Center is at, and it's there for a reason. And Big Bear, where Canelo and all those guys go train, it's the high altitude. It helps, and it definitely, people are doing it for a reason, and I definitely felt amazing. When I came back home, I did 8 rounds for the first time since I've started training, the last 8 months, and I did it with ease when I got back to Florida. So that's why I was just like, oh my goodness, I might have to go out to Colorado before every big fight now because of that. Altitude training it's legit. It's the real deal. I mean, your lungs and your body actually works a lot harder. So I'm a big fan of Colorado anyways, Dennis. It's beautiful up there. And I'm definitely even more of a fan now because it really gets you in shape at high altitude.
That altitude, I mean, it's the real thing, man. You get headaches. Because of the altitude, you don't sleep as well. You got to wait longer for water to boil, and you can't breathe. So, all right, man. Well, best of luck, Travis. Kick some butt. We're rooting for you.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Hey, hot times are on the horizon, boxing fans, and we will keep you right up to speed on the Ringside Boxing Show with Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responsi. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Guys.
And John and I are going to be right back with Keith Thurman, so do not touch that dial. We're coming right back after this.
You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show, the hottest, sweatiest show on West Coast radio.
What are you doing?
I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. Writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Responsi and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com. Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the sweet science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Hamilton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responsi, and today's featured guest has held the WBA and WBC welterweight championships, and on Saturday night, Keith Thurman will return to the ring for the first time in 22 months to fight Josesito Lopez for the WBA super welterweight title. That'll be at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and we'll see that fight on Fox. And personally, I am really looking forward to seeing the return of one of the most entertaining and the best fighters in the sport. Keith Thurman's 28-0, 22 knockouts, and the last time we saw him, which was March of 2017, he was beating Danny Garcia by split decision. The next month he had surgery to remove calcium deposits from his right elbow, and I guess last March it was, he suffered a hand injury that sidelined him for the rest of 2018. Keith, great to have you back on the Ringside Boxing Show. It's been since 2017. I think you were getting ready to get married last time we talked to you.
Yeah.
So welcome back, and thanks for finding some time for us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, first let's ask you a question that you're probably real sick of answering by now. How's your elbow and how's your hand?
Well, the elbow is completely fine. It doesn't feel 100% like my elbow did before I ever needed surgery, obviously, right? But there's not one hiccup in it in the recovery. It feels great. It can take all the impact that I've been giving it throughout camp. The hand, it's a little bit more complicated. My doctor said we're going to need to kind of do what athletes do and monitor it, because that has a possible. I have two different medical opinions, but one was saying that it might be arthritic, which means that the inflammation might come and go. It might be something I might need to monitor. And, you know, I got the green light to get back in the ring, so I said let's focus on the pros and not the cons, and we'll just do what we need to do as an athlete. But I'm happy to be in shape, to be back on the 26th, back in Brooklyn, for the fans, for myself, in the sport of boxing. It's going to be an exciting day.
You're in the toughest line of work there is. Training is hard, fighting is hard, but I'm guessing for a guy like you, being on the sidelines with an injury is probably the toughest part of being an undefeated world champ, and you've endured that for 22 months. Has it been a challenge during that time to maintain your sanity?
No, it's just a little depressing, you know. At the end of the day, you just announced my credentials there, and when I beat Danny Garcia, I unified the WBA and the WBC. That was the highlight of my career, and I was unable to defend my 2 world titles. I had to relinquish one of the titles, and now I'm defending the WBA, which is the title that I've had forever. So, you know, that was a little disappointing. And then having back-to-back injuries, it's like, you know, I used to say to myself, am I a horse that's run too many laps around the racetrack? You know, am I breaking apart? You know, I need to stay together. I need to get back together, get in shape, because I'm still in my prime and I'm one of the best fighters in the world today. So luckily with my team and everything and my doctors, they kept encouraging me, you will be back in the ring, you will be back in the ring. And so that, I just looked at the bright side, man. You know, there's ups and downs in life, and true champions, it's not about being at the top, but sometimes it's about how you really fight through adversity. You know, some of the greatest champions of all times have been beaten and then came back to become champion again. And, you know, I'm still undefeated, but I've had my struggles, and here we are back in the ring, showcasing our skills and our talents to the world from the 26th.
Mm-hmm. You know, there were people out there who questioned, Keith, whether you still had the same hunger for the sport that you had when you were a little younger. Do you feel the same hunger, or are you even hungrier now that you're coming back?
I definitely have the same hunger. It's just different, because I was a little bit more aggressive in my trash talking when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And that's because I was young and I wanted to be heard. And I've beaten everybody they put in front of me. Floyd never wanted to fight me. And at the end of the day, you know, I'm where I am in the sport of boxing for a reason. And I'm more comfortable understanding that I am a real champion. You know, I was fighting to become champion. And so there was a certain hunger to that. But now I am champion, and I've been champion, and I unified. And now it's all about reunifying and reestablishing my place at 147. But everybody knows that Keith Thurman belongs at the top, and that Keith Thurman is one of the most devastating fighters at 147, because, you know, there's a few opinionated people, and we still have two other undefeated world champions at 147. So it's a little pick'em when it comes to who's your favorite fighter right now. But at the end of the day, I'm at the top. I belong at the top, and I'm not going anywhere. This is where I belong. I'm living living out my dream and my passion, and that fire is still there. I plan on showing it this upcoming bout.
When you hear, I'm just curious about this, when you hear or you read that somebody says, hey, maybe he doesn't have the same hunger or whatever, do you use that to motivate yourself more, or are you already very motivated and don't require any of that?
Listening to your opinion is not my job. Listening to anybody's opinion is not my job. It's my job to go to the gym, to train hard, to do what I've been doing since I was 7 years old, which is being the best fighter that I can be. That's all that we focus on. We focus on living out our life and our legacy. I chose the sport of boxing. You know, I didn't pick up boxing 2 weeks ago. We didn't pick it up 5 years ago. We didn't just go to a boxing gym, land a good right hand on somebody and say, oh, I think I want to do this and turn professional. That's not how the story goes. I've been dedicated to this sport my whole life. So listening to people's opinions about me, they really don't know me. So it has no merit. Their opinions have no merit on the lifestyle that I've chose and the dedication that I've always had to this sport.
Very interesting. Okay, ring rust can be an issue for a fighter who's been out for a while. And how much do you expect to have to shred when you get in the ring against Josesito Lopez? Or do you already feel real crisp in there?
There is a little bit of ring rust. 22 months out of the ring is nothing to bat an eye about, you know?
Yeah.
But this whole camp is all about getting the ring rust off. This whole fight is about getting some of the ring rust off. And come the 26th, you're not going to see the best Keith Thurman you've ever seen in your life, but you're going to see one of the best fighters in the world. And I'm going to show that no matter what the layoff is, no matter how many injuries I've gone through, that I'm still a devastating force and a fighter that is going to be hard to beat today, tomorrow, and in the future.
Keith, Josesito he's kind of an action figure. He's gutsy, he's aggressive. He's won 6 of his last 7, including his most recent one last April against Miguel Cruz. Why was he the right guy for your comeback fight? What did you guys like about him?
Well, he's on a winning streak, like you mentioned. He has a lot of credentials. He's fought a lot of champions of the world, ex-world champions. He's done things throughout his career. He had a nice little highlight moments. He's made some good upsets throughout his career, and we just like his style. You know, he's going to come to fight. He might move a little bit. I noticed he was boxing a little bit on the outside in his last fight, but he's not really known for really like an Amir Khan, really moving a lot on the outside, really just trying to box and outpoint you. You know, he's coming to fight. He wants to make a statement that he deserves to be champion of the world again. And I just think it's a good fight for 22 months not being in the ring, for TV, for the fans, back at Barclays. I think it's going to be an interesting showdown.
You know, I'm guessing that getting in some good competitive rounds is something that would really help you the most. On the other hand, I know you'd love to knock him out in 4. What do you want to do that night? Do you want him going to deep water with the guy?
I want to win. You know, I want to win, and I want to look good. I want to come out healthy and ready to attack the world of boxing again. If that means a 1st round, 4th round, 7th round stoppage, 12th round decision, it is what it is, you know. As those who have noticed, you know, I'm content with getting the W. And I'm always looking for the knockout. I love putting my opponents on the back foot. I love showcasing my power to them, regardless of the fact that I didn't knock down Danny Garcia, I didn't knock down Sean Porter. Throughout that fight, they knew they were in front of a dangerous man, and they took some blows that really wasn't in the back of their mind. It was on the forefront of their mind that they need to respect my punching power. So I'm going to do the same thing to Josesito Lopez, see how he handles it, and I'm going to, you know, be looking for some big counters. I think I might be able to slip them in. Got to be strategic. But at the end of the day, like I said, we want to walk away victorious and healthy. That's what we care about.
You know, a lot has happened in the welterweight division, as we've been speaking about for the last couple of years, Keith, and while you've been working your way back. And most notable has been the rise of Errol Spence. I and most others still obviously consider you the best welterweight in the world, and Spence is at number 2. When you finally get together, probably in 2020, if it happens, what kind of fight do you think the fans will likely see?
One of the best matchups of the decade. I mean, you know, especially, you know, with it being, you know, let's say it is 2020, you know, we're going to be at the start of a brand new decade, and it still might end up being one of the best matchups for the following next 10 years. I mean, I think it's just as exciting as Tito Oscar de la Hoya, if you want my opinion. Yeah. it's a amazing fight, one to go down in the history books. And if everything goes the way that I hope that I would like to plan it out, I will be reunified by that time. Who knows if Errol will or will not have fought, let's just put Terence Crawford out there. But at a minimum, you're looking at 3 world titles on the line. A minimum of 3 world titles on the line. I always said that it'd be great to have an amazing unification bout where I have 2 titles and another fighter has 2 titles. But if I have to clean up the whole division, I don't mind doing it either. That's just more paychecks for me in my future. So I'm really looking forward to that fight. I've always been looking forward to that fight. But because he is the ranked number 2 guy, with all due respect, he would be ranked number 1 if there wasn't a Keith one-time Thurman. So with all that in mind, I'm not fighting him prior to these injuries, and I'm not fighting him later on this year. This is a get-back year. We're getting back in the ring. We're getting back feeling good. And then when we feel good, we'll be ready to dominate the welterweight division, and we'll be looking for that big fight.
Yeah, Errol's going to be fighting Mikey Garcia on March 16th. Just curious, what do you think is going to happen in that fight? Who's going to win?
I definitely say Errol Spence for many reasons. He's a bigger guy. And Mikey just really hasn't fought any good fighters at 147. So going after the top guys at 147, it's just what I would like to call a little bit of a stretch, I would like his team to kind of get their feet wet, or maybe even, even if he fought a Sean Porter, it's still not an easy fight for Mikey Garcia, Just 147 is not the same as all the other weight classes. 140, 135, Adrien Broner's career proved that it's not easy to just jump right into 147 from the lower weight division, no matter how much skills and talent you have. Now, Mikey's always been a talented individual ever since the amateurs, and he has a little bit of punching power. He might be able to get some of Errol's respect, but Errol is a puncher in his own right, and Mikey has never faced a puncher like Errol Spence or a puncher that's really bigger than him. Errol has good size and reach at 147. Mikey, I saw them standing right next to each other. When Mikey's throwing the straight right hand, Errol's going to be able to throw a check hook, and they're going to be able to trade power for power. Errol Spence is not Robert Easter, so at the end of the day, I just think he's taking a big bite. I don't think he's going to really be able to chew it and swallow it down. But at the end of the day, him and his team are very confident, and round by round, we'll see where that confidence comes from, if there's merit to why Mikey was so confident in creating this fight.
Can Amir Khan give Crawford problems?
Give him problems? I don't know. Give him a good fight? I believe so. I don't know if he's really going to give him problems, but I do believe that Amir Khan can give Terence Crawford a good fight. Earlier this year, when we went to Fox and Fox announced my fight date and all the other fight dates for the first, I believe, 6 months for this year, I did a few interviews that day, and I remember talking about Crawford, and I mentioned Crawford hasn't even fought anybody like Amir Khan, because I say he doesn't have any credentials at 147, even though he's the champion of the world, because of who he beat to get it, So I like the fight, it's a respectable fight, and he can get some credentials, but I would still like to see just more. I just believe that there's more that we can get from Crawford, or more that Crawford can offer the 147-pound division when it comes to some of the opposition out there, even excluding the world champions today. So, but to start off from his last opponent to go to Amir Khan, that's a nice jump. And I favor Crawford in the fight, but Amir Khan is a talented fighter. He does have fast hands. He can box on the outside. We'll see what happens in that fight.
Keith, how many fights are we hoping to see you in? Are we planning on seeing you in 2019?
It all depends on. It all depends on how this fight goes down. But it's a minimum of twice. You're going to see me a minimum of twice this year. That's guaranteed. No matter how I've been looking at it, there's no excuses that I'm not going to be able to be in the ring twice this year. There's a part of me that would like to squeeze in 3. I don't know when I'm going to do it. There's got to be a year when I know that I'm healthy enough and I'm strong enough. I'm definitely going to try to squeeze in 3 to make up for some of the inactivity that I've had in these past 22 months. So if I'm ever sick in the gym, I'll train a little harder throughout the weekend to make up for my sick days. So I consider this long layoff kind of like a day, and I missed out some fights from not fighting in these 22 months. So there's got to be some time in the future where I will be a more active fighter. But me and my team so far, we know that we're shooting for 2 minimum this year.
Okay.
I don't want to make promises on 3 because I like to be a man of my word and I don't like to go back on it.
Okay. Hey, man, we got 1,000 more questions for you, but you got a lot of interviews lined up, and we very, very much appreciate the time that you've made for us today. Keith, best of luck January 26th at Barclays against Josesito Lopez, a fight people can watch on Fox. And thanks for being a part of the Ringside Boxing Show again today. You're a class act and a great interview and a great fighter. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
You bet. All the best.
Great to be on the show, guys. You guys take care.
You too. All the best.
Keith Thurman, 22 knockouts, and we are very glad he's back in the mix in that scintillating welterweight division. Hey, do you like the Ringside Boxing Show? Do us a solid. Tell your boxing friends about us. Spread the word on your social media and help us grow. Also, if you have not yet discovered the #1 website in the world for daily boxing news, what are you waiting for? We update RingsideBoxingShow.com 365 days a year with the hottest stories and biggest headlines. If you are a fight fan, this should be your first stop every morning. Might be the only boxing website you need to visit all day long. Discover us right now, and you will be amazed. RingsideBoxingShow.com. Don't forget to check out our book, too. John and I wrote the definitive biography of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward. It's called Intimate Warfare. It's an Amazon bestseller, and you can find it there. Thanks, as always, to our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and my partner, John J. Risponti, plus our outstanding British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, and another huge thanks to Keith, one-time Thurman, who you will see Saturday night against Josesito Lopez on the Fox Sports Network. Finally, we appreciate you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience again today. Keep your chin tucked, and we will talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
It's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path.